This is the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Better Sports Network, and the FFPC. You can connect with me on X at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on X at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2025. That's RV Radio 2025. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel as well. Now, without further ado, here's the latest episode of the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to Tuesday night, October 14th, 2025. This is the RotoViz High Stakes Slowdown. My name is Eric Balkman. So glad to have you aboard tonight, getting ready for another fun-filled week in the FFPC, another fun-filled week in fantasy football, and hopefully the ball bounces your way this week. We're going to try to manipulate that a little bit by telling you our information and our tips and our advice tonight on who to start, who to sit, who to pick up, who to drop, and all those things that will decide whether you move on in your FFPC leagues into the potentially the championship round of the FFPC Main Event and the FFPC Big Gorilla. And you never know, maybe this is the year that you take down that $1 million grand prize. If you are interested in taking down a prize this week, check out the FFPC Weekly Challenge, which is live for both Thursday and Sunday. There's no draft. There's no salary cap. You're just picking 10 or 12 players, depending upon if you want to play with kickers and defenses or not. Only one player per NFL team. If you want Jaylen Warren, you can't have DK Metcalf. If you want Jordan Mason, you can't have Justin Jefferson. Win up to $2,500 this week. You can play in 10, 30, or 100 team contests. Play now at myffpc.com, myffpc.com. I want to tell you to remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which is 3 times per week during the season. Tuesdays at 10, Thursdays at 7, and Fridays at 10. More on those other shows this week coming up later on in the program. I want to get to our guest tonight. He is a player who has 29, by my count, could be more, FFPC high stakes league titles under his belt. He also currently, as we head into week 7, is sitting in 23rd place in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, a competition that's going to feature a $1 million grand prize. Please welcome back onto the show from the High Stakes Fantasy Footballer, making his RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown debut tonight. It is the J-Gator himself, Mr. Steve Highfill. Steve, good evening and welcome. Oh, Steve, I think you might be on mute. Let me see if I can. Hold on.
That was me. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Okay, perfect. We defeated technology.
I'm doing great. How are you, Balky?
Doing good, man. Here's the thing I wanted to lead off with. I was talking with my best friend Bryce Kamish before we went on tonight. Actually, I was talking about work earlier today, and I noticed your team in 23rd place overall is Good Neighbors, spelled Nabers. And I said, wow. This is pretty impressive that this guy ended up taking Malik Neighbors, obviously in the first or second round, and he's sitting in 23rd overall. I wonder how he did it. And then I looked at your draft board. You had the 7 pick in this draft. You went with Saquon Barkley. You let Neighbors go, and yet the name of the team is still Good Neighbors. Well, what's the reasoning behind this?
It's just fantasy football name, selection. That's it. It had nothing really to do with the players.
Okay.
Take. I try to vary my drafts. I'll draft about 30 to 40 teams between the two contests during the draft periods.
And so you may have team names that they'll feature a player's name in them, but that player might not be on that specific roster.
Correct. I just like that name that week, that moment when I was.
I gotcha. Okay, very cool. Steve, let's get into the nitty gritty here. We have 3 complicated backfields that I wanted to ask you about. right up at the top of the show. Rico Dowdle in Carolina has gone back-to-back weeks with no Chuba Hubbard getting over 200-plus scrimmage yards, which is flat out unbelievable. We don't know if he returns this week, Hubbard. And I've heard people talking, and I don't think they're necessarily wrong. We've heard people talking, pundits in the industry saying that Dowdle is the starter. Hubbard is like the handcuff now. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far, but quite frankly, I would like to see Carolina ride one of these guys with the other being the backup. How do you view this Panthers situation going forward? Are both of these guys startable this week? And what do you think the volume is going to be like for Hubbard and Dowdle, assuming Hubbard comes back this week?
Yeah, they've created a mess there. It's going to be a mess going forward. But Hubbard really wasn't performing at a high level like we anticipated coming in to the injury. But, they got a big investment in him, and he was near All-Pro last year. Dowdle, I always get his name wrong. He had a good year last year at Dallas, and he came in with a chip on his shoulder. But the last 2 weeks, I've really ridden him in the DSFs, and he was just outstanding. He looked like the better back the last 2 weeks. But you never in NFL want to take a starter out because of an injury and not give him a chance to come back. So I think going into this week, you're going to see a drop in the production and in the actual usage of Dowdle, and that's just going to be necessary. But, I mean, Hubbard is still questionable right now.
Right.
Even if he comes back, I think the split's probably going to be more like 60-40 or 70-30 with Dowdle. And, he has a chance to still put up some good numbers against a very mediocre Jets defense. So I would still lean his way this week. After that, there's no telling what's going to go on. If it might be a 50-50 split or what's going to happen.
Steve, do you view, and obviously this is going to be the case of what your specific team looks like, but I guess would both of these guys be playable this week against the Jets? I mean,
I do not see that. This is not the Detroit Lions kind of backfield or offense. They'll probably get them both in there and try to ride the hot hand. Maybe they might do it that way. But I wouldn't never start both of them.
Okay. If you had, well, I don't know if I want to do this, but we'll try it. Let's do a quick would you rather here this week. The Panthers are at the Jets. Would you rather, and this is assuming Chuba Hubbard is back, would you rather start Chuba Hubbard at the Jets or Nick Chubb at the Seahawks?
Neither. I would stay away from both of those. I don't know the situation in Houston right now, what's going on there, but I wouldn't start Chuba this week at all, especially if he carries a question mark all the way into the game time.
The second backfield I want to tackle here tonight, for lack of a better term, the Pittsburgh Steelers got a little bit more interesting over the last 3 weeks. Now, one of those weeks, Pittsburgh was on bye. The week before that, it would have been week 4, I want to say, was in across the pond, and Jaylen Warren was out for that game. Jaylen Warren did not play, which means it was Kenneth Gainwell taking a starring role and ran with that job. This past week, after the Steelers came back from bye, Warren was healthy. He got 11 carries to Gainwell's 6. And Gainwell actually got 6 catches, granted only for 14 yards, but 6 catches. Warren did get 2 catches. They play the Thursday night game against a Bengals defense that leaves a little bit to be desired, both against the pass and the run. I don't want to say that in this scenario, you have Gainwell and Warren on the same team, but you play a lot of teams. Let's say you have Gainwell on one team, you have Warren on another team. How confident would you feel in either one of those guys or both of those guys being a nice flex play for FFPC players against the Bengals Thursday night?
It's still Jaylen Warren's RB1 position to hold. He's only going to increase his production after coming off the injury. Gainwell's always been a journeyman that can put up some good points for you. if the first string back was gone and out of the way. But and that's what he's been able to take advantage of. But it's Jalen Warren all the way. I wouldn't start getting more over him, or even if I had him on two different teams.
The only way you'd be playing Gainwell is if Warren was out, right? Like right. Okay. Yeah. So there's one team that my son and I co-manage. He's 12 years old. This is his second year playing. He's just with his buddies. And we went heavy wide receiver, and we've kind of been missing on our second running back all season. And it's usually been one of two Patriots, Ramondre Stevenson and Trevion Henderson. Now, because of this league and my poor guidance and his poor drafting based on that guidance, we've been forced to start a Patriots running back a lot as our second running back here. With Henderson, we know what everybody thought about him. I shouldn't say everybody, what a lot of people thought of him and how high he was being drafted in the FFPC this year. We know Ramondre Stevenson's fumbling problem, and yet it seems like he's getting a pass from Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels, and Stevenson's been out there a ton, even though Henderson is probably the more electric of the two players. However, Henderson, one of his strengths that was expected to be a strength in the pros was his pass blocking. He's not been great at that. And he's also whiffed on a couple of big blocks in the passing game that would have sprung his teammates for big plays, but he didn't make the play. A couple of penalties a few weeks ago as well. It seems like Henderson can't get out of his own way. We know that the Patriots are playing the now Tennessee Titans with a new head coach, at least an interim coach, as they move on from Brian Callahan. Titans defense has not been great so far this year. I mean, it's quite frankly, it's been bad mostly. The Henderson and Stevenson thing, how good or how would you feel about starting either one of these players in your flex position? Normally, I would say I would not feel good about it. And then I look at the matchup this week and I have to think twice here, Steve.
Yeah. I would take Stevenson all day long over Henderson. Henderson did come in with a lot of hype, but he has a lot of talent as well. But that hasn't translated to the NFL. And even when he's had more opportunities, he hasn't done much with them at all. And he is a liability in pass blocking. Stevenson's fumbled, but hey, every one of those looked like they were good defensive plays and not so much just him fumbling the ball. And Stevenson's a thumper, and I believe that's what is more of what that coaching staff likes to see. And he has just as much speed and ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. So I would go Stevenson all the way against the Titans.
Mike Vrabel said this earlier this morning, I think it was, and he said his running backs in general might be focusing too much on protecting the ball and not fumbling rather than making plays. Somebody was talking about this a couple of weeks ago too. When you're a running back and you're thinking about not screwing up rather than making a play, that's going to be a detriment to your performance. And certainly I understand why Trevion Henderson would feel that way, given he's a rookie and he's got to show that he can be trusted out there. But Stevenson is a guy that has been trusted by the coaching staff. And so I'm not sure where it's coming from. But to your point, Steve, maybe it's just it was one of those things where the defenses are making really good plays on it. It's not necessarily all his fault. But yeah, I think until we see trust in this Patriots coaching staff in Trevion Henderson, he's not a cut. I wouldn't cut him, but he's got to be on my bench. He puts together 2 consecutive weeks, or maybe there's an injury to Stevenson. We're having a different conversation right now, but at this point, Henderson has got to be on the bench.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would say that Stevenson does not allow the fumbling to really get in his head. If you watched that game last night and saw Merritt, the young back for the Commanders, you could tell all over his face that he was just beside himself with making a fumble, and that will affect your play. And I think the people have been talking about carrying that in your head and trying to perform. Vrabel's right. You got to let it, just forget about it. Go out there and be a running back.
I want to talk about the wide receiver position here, specifically in Cleveland. Jerry Jeudy has had a couple of opportunities to make some plays with Dillon Gabriel now. Dillon Gabriel named the starter. Joe Flacco is gone. In 2 games, we have seen a 2 for 15 stat line from Jerry Jeudy. We have seen a 5 for 43 stat line. That second one is on 13 targets too, which is, as Pete Campbell would say, not great, Bob. Jerry Jeudy is a player that a lot, myself included, I wasn't necessarily high on him, but I did draft him here or there. And quite frankly, I haven't felt great about starting him at any point this season, Steve. And now with these last 2 weeks from Dillon Gabriel, this is a player that's probably going to blow up. If he's going to blow up at all this year, it'll be on my bench for a couple of weeks before I trust him. I'm pretty concerned with Jerry Jeudy and his relationship with Dillon Gabriel on the field right now. This is something that they got to fix and build chemistry on the fly. And I don't want to be at the detriment of Jeudy trying to build this with Gabriel by putting him in my lineup. I'll let him learn it on the bench, but I don't know. Maybe you have more positive things to say about Jeudy, but this is a guy that I don't trust going forward. And quite frankly, it might be a lost season for him.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I've got a lot of shares of Jeudy. I took him as my wide receiver 4 in a number of leagues. And, he's been nothing more than a disappointment and a liability. And a few times I did trust him to come around. He never came around. And last week was probably his worst week of the year. And I had him on the bench all the way through all of my teams. So he's got a lot of raw talent. He had a good year last year. But he had Flacco at the beginning of the year, really didn't do much. It almost looks like he's just frustrated with everything and not playing professional level ball. The quarterback plays very sketchy. They've had a lot of issues on offense altogether. So he's on my bench for the rest of the year, and I may even drop him in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, the whole dropping aspect, I think the only way I would drop a talent like that is if I was really in a bye week pinch, unless I really believed in somebody on the waiver wire. Then I could see, okay, maybe it is an upgrade. But I get it. I mean, the frustration's real with Jeudy, and I haven't really seen much to make me believe it's going to turn around anytime soon. A player that we have not seen all season, Steve, is a player that Ray C is asking us about on YouTube right now. What should we expect from Rashee Rice in his first game back from suspension? So I can tell you that Rice is eligible to return this week against the Las Vegas Raiders. That game is in Kansas City. So it's at Arrowhead. He comes back. And this will be the first time that Rashee Rice has played in a meaningful NFL game, regular season game, since week 4 of 2024. He had a season-ending knee injury last year, basically only played 3 games. But in those 3 games, 24 catches, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns on 29 targets. I feel pretty good about starting him right away in week 7. What say you, Steve? What are you expecting in his first taste of NFL action since week 4 of last year?
Going to be like a thoroughbred coming out of the starting gate. I think he does really well. He explodes. He's going to bring a whole new dynamic to the Chiefs that they need. He's going to improve that entire offense across the board. He will free up Worthy on the deeper balls and come in and fill in nicely. And with Hollywood Brown beside him and Kelsey, you're going to see the old KC offense come back just because he was added.
Kelsey is what's your level of concern with him now coming back with Rashee Rice? I just feel like these two were not putting up big numbers together last year, and Kelsey really stepped up when Rice went down.
Kelsey's retired. He got one foot off the train and one foot on the train, man. He's got a superstar wife to be. I'm surprised he's playing at all. I don't know why he's out there. He did okay last weekend, but I do think Rice coming back is going to affect his the need to target him at all. And he has he's long in the tooth, and you can see it moving a lot differently now. So if I was him, I'd go spend my time with Taylor Swift.
And he, Joe Flacco was saying this earlier this week, and this is what I've always. This is the way when I was a kid, I kept playing sports until organized sports until I was 19. And I couldn't anymore unless I joined in adult leagues, which I eventually did. But when I remember when I was a kid, even sports, I didn't necessarily liked all that much. Like I never really liked baseball that much. I like watching it, but I was never really that good of a player. But I played it every single year I could because I knew there was going to be a point where I couldn't play anymore. Joe Flacco said as much when somebody asked him why he still plays. And he said, look, we have a finite amount of time in our lives to play in the NFL. And I don't want to look back when I'm 50 years old, which is not that far away, and realize that I left more out there. I could have given more. And Steve, I wonder if that's the way Kelsey's thinking too, where he knows his best football is behind him, but he just wants to squeeze every last drop of fantasy football, or excuse me, of football out of him before he Michael Jordan. I think that when he came back the second time with the Wizards, I think he wanted. I can't remember who said this, but I think it's really appropriate. I think he just wanted to feel his body break down and know that, okay, I literally cannot do this anymore. And I still think there's part of Kelsey that knows he's going to enjoy retirement, but there's a part of him that's like, I can still do this. And until I can't, I'm going to keep going. And I think that's maybe what the mentality is with a lot of NFL players.
I think so, but he's done it on a winning team. And when you start having a losing team, and if they go sub 500, he'll be done.
It's always easy to come back and play for a winners too. Tommy Island chiming in right now. He wants one more title. He does. And listen, if Travis Kelce was grinding away on a team that was destined to finish 4-13 or even 6-11, I don't think he'd be out there anymore. He clearly believes in the team. Okay, getting back to the Giants here and wide receivers. Wan'Dale Robinson plays Denver this week. Now, I don't know if he's going to get the Surtain treatment. Wan'Dale Robinson always seemed like a player to me that I don't want to say he was matchup proof, but he usually had that 5 for 50 and maybe a touchdown every third week or something like that. So he was always flirting with 10 to 15 points. We've seen some spike week games from him, but the big spike week, obviously, against Dallas. We saw one last week on Thursday Night Football against the Eagles. He gets Denver this week. You think he's better left on benches, or is he still startable as a flex this week in Denver in Week 7, Steve?
You got to start him. I got a lot of shares of Wan'Dale really late in the drafts. I've always liked him as a player and coming back. I liked him even more when Neighbors was still healthy, but he's a strong play and will get the volume, and they can move him around enough and manipulate him so that they can get the matchup they want with him. And the kid is shifty, fast, and with some good hands. I would always play him if in a flex if I didn't have any other choices, and I've started him in many leagues, many weeks, and will continue to do so.
I'm going to be starting him in most leagues this week. There might be one or two where I'm heavy on receiver, and he might not be able to. I can't squeeze him into my lineup. But I do like the fact that the Giants are 7-point dogs, which should mean a negative game script and a lot of targets for Robinson, especially if the Giants are trying to hang with the Broncos late in that game. Total on that game is only 39.5, but I've never really started or sat Wan'Dale Robinson based on his based on his touchdown potential.
Look out for Theo Johnson as well. He's coming on like he should be. When he got injured the year before in 24, a lot of people really didn't know who he was this year, but he's something else too. Between those two, I think coming from behind, you're going to see a lot of targets for both of them.
I wish Steven Yergalos was in the chat tonight, the Fantasy Sopranos himself. Anybody who watches this show or the HSFF knows that guy was scooping up Theo Johnson as his third tight end in every single best ball that he was going against me. And I should have jumped the route. I should have taken him around before I knew he was going to take him, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, I think I got him like the last pick of the draft 2 or 3 times this last season. So.
Well, he this is even before the Neighbors injury, and I think I've said this before too. That guy we didn't know who the number 2 target on the Giants was going to be at the start of the year. We knew it was Neighbors, and then after that, I don't know. But Theo Johnson obviously had a good shot at being it. Now they have Wan'Dale Robinson stepping up, and Johnson could be the number 1 target certain weeks, and for sure, like the number 2, I think I'd rather have him than Slayton or Hyatt or any of these other guys on that team. So especially with Jackson Dart. I'm excited to see. It'll be really, really fun to see next year when you have Dart with nearly a full year of experience under his belt, throwing to Robinson, throwing to Johnson, getting Neighbors back, Scadaboo in that backfield, Tyrone Tracy mixing in there. Exciting stuff for the Giants offense as far as how good their youth is there right
now. Yeah, they're starting to come together and look good. They got some really strong talent that's playing well right now. The Big Blue is back.
Yes. The player that we don't know if he's going to be back this week or not is Brock Bowers. Certainly frustrating for anybody who invested in him. But I think every obstacle is an opportunity. I don't know who said that. But every obstacle is an opportunity. And with Bowers being out, the opportunity opens for another pass catcher to be snaring balls from Geno Smith. Jacoby Myers has been a little bit underwhelming, but a guy who has had the biggest spike week out of any of the Raiders pass catchers this season, including Ashton Genty, is one Trey Tucker. What about Brock Bowers being out again this week? And we don't know. We don't know if he's going to be out. The Raiders, obviously, I mentioned earlier, are in Arrowhead to play the Chiefs. But what about Trey Tucker, not only this week, Steve, but as long as Bauer is out, we have to seriously consider this guy as a flex. As weird as that may seem, he's getting the targets and he's got that big play potential as well.
Yeah, I actually like him better when Bowers is in play. I think that he can stretch the field and he gets more long ball chances that way. And he's a flex start depending on the matchup. The problem is the line and Geno Smith's play right now is horrible. So that all we have to take into account. But Trey's a real talent. You can't base a year off of 1 week performance. Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of people make mistakes going in on the waiver wire and overpaying for him, including me on a couple of leagues. I had no wide receivers on a few leagues. I needed somebody, and he looked pretty good. So I overpaid for him. But he's a good flex start, I think. But Maier's going to pick up a good bit of what was left behind by Bowers. He did that last week too, and paid off at DFS teams for me. So I expect that to continue.
I have one dynasty team with CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, and Brandon Ayuk on, and I had like no depth at wide receiver. Needless to say, Trey Tucker's been starting for me like the last 3 weeks in that league. Yeah. It's not been pretty, but I'll tell you what, it could be a lot worse. And I like the fact that I too overpaid for Tucker in that league to get him because I needed him badly.
Yeah, I'm with you right there, and just cross your fingers that they start to improve a little bit with the running game coming around.
We're crossing our fingers for the health of David Njoku right now in Cleveland. Kevin Stefanski spoke to the media yesterday. We don't have an update on that knee injury that he suffered against Pittsburgh on Sunday. And after he went out, Harold Fannin really turned it on. 7 catches, 81 yards on 10 targets. Second on the team in targets behind Judy, who had 13. But Fannin caught 7 of his, and he churned out 81 yards. This week, the Cleveland Browns get a little bit of a reprieve in the schedule as they are facing the Miami Dolphins and that hapless defense. So I'm going to ask you this question in 2 ways. Number one, how do you feel about Harold Fannin being a must-start in Miami if Njoku is out? And if Njoku is active for this game, how do you feel in an FFPC tight end premium league about both of these guys each being flexible in week 7?
Yeah, I would stay away from Njoku, and he's one of my favorite tight ends. I've drafted him last several years in a lot of my teams. The new tight end Fannin from the rookie, he is legit. The kid can ball out. He was balling out already before Njoku, if he goes out. He's a must start if Njoku's out, but I also expect that Jenkins in the running game to just beat up on Miami big time this week. I thought he'd be better last week, but they ended up the game script went against them and they were playing from behind. But Miami's very susceptible to the run. But the best friend of a young quarterback is a tight end, and you're going to see that connection with Fannin quite a bit if Njoku's out.
I'm just extrapolating this out. Harold Fannin is on pace for an 80 catch season right now, which is pretty impressive considering where people were drafting him, considering where people got him in auction leagues and so on and so forth. And with Gabriel having this special connection with Njoku early in week 6, and then sort of continuing that connection with Fannin in week 7 after Njoku went out. Boy, you really, really got to like Fannin. And I don't know if I'd want to play. I think I'm with you. I don't know if I want to play Njoku even against the Dolphins this week. We don't know just because he's active, we don't know how healthy he is. We do know Fannin is, as you said, legit. And he's a guy that is going to be, I want him all of my lineups, tight end premium or not in week 7. Another tight end here that we should touch on is a player that was very exciting to own at the start of the season, Steve, and Juwan Johnson. There were a lot of people after his first couple of games said, hey, if you followed the money and you saw all the money, the contract that the Saints threw at Juwan Johnson, you would have understood that he was going to be a significant part of their passing game. And he was, and he got a little beat up, got a little dinged up. The numbers have gone down slightly. You're looking at 5 and 6 catches those first couple of weeks. He hasn't had more than 3 catches in a game since. In fact, the last 2 weeks, he's only had 2, and he's failed the top 30 receiving yards in any of the last 3 games for the Saints as well. Do you view that start that he got off to as fugazi? It's not real. It's a mirage. Do you view it that way? Or do you think Juwan Johnson actually gets back on track and becomes sort of like a top 12 tight end in the coming weeks?
Oh, he is a top 12. He'll end up in the top 12. They just got to get back to what they started with. The quarterback there has looked good in the last couple of weeks. Johnson, I don't think is fully healthy yet, but he is worth every penny that they paid him. He is an important part of that offense. He's got wide receiver skills for a big tight end and should become more of a part of the game plans going forward. But we've got to get that kid to play better at quarterback to help him out. But I'm one who bought a bunch of him in the drafts, late in the drafts, because I really wasn't sure if you were going to get all the way back, from the concussions, and where that might end up. And the long ball guy, who's 22.
Shaheed.
Yeah, I don't really draft much of him, but there's definitely a lot more potential targets and success for Johnson coming in the rest of the year if they will, include in the game plan, get better play out of the quarterback.
Yeah, and it was the same quarterback too, in Rattler that was tossing the ball to him earlier in the season. So hopefully he can get to, as you said, get back on track and getting the ball to Juwan Johnson again. This week, the Saints I should really look to see who's on bye. New Orleans is playing Chicago this week, so the Bears on the short week, obviously. Maybe the Saints can take advantage of that and get Juwan Johnson back involved in the game plan, along with Olave for sure.
Let me say one more thing about that topic. It's not just a Juwan Johnson. I've had many superstar studs, first rounders, go a couple weeks, especially with an injury, coming off an injury, throwing up goose eggs. So, it's not unusual for that to happen to someone a couple weeks here and there. And so, let's not put too much into Johnson's play the last couple of weeks.
Especially with tight ends, which I think can be more volatile. Like the stud running backs, the top 12, top 15 running backs, top 15 receivers, quarterbacks, they're always going to get theirs. But I think you cannot say that about the top tight ends. Brock Bowers is a good example here. Tucker Kraft, who a lot of people said was going to be a top 3 tight end this year. Obviously, I know he dealt with some injuries, but he's not being heavily targeted in that Packers passing game. Goddard has been hit or miss. Laporta, I think you can make the case for that. Travis Kelce, definitely. Hunter Henry's another guy that's been boom or bust most weeks this season. I just feel like with tight end, it's from a week-to-week basis, it's so difficult for us to predict whether, unless you're like Trey McBride or somebody like that, it's so difficult for us to predict how successful a guy is going to be on any given game at tight end. I think that's the hardest position to predict, which is why a lot of us, myself included, will tell you that, oh, tight end is so bare, it's dead. There's nothing there at the end of every season because we've been frustrated by it. I think that's just the nature of the position in fantasy football.
You got 4 very even tight ends that are very much part of their offensive schemes. You've got McBride, Bowers, Ferguson, and Warren. I would start any one of those guys any week and be fine with it because you're going to have pretty much the same production out of all of them unless you get a spike. But probably Ferguson's been the most reliable. But McBride woke up with the second string quarterback last week with Brissett. So that was nice to see, but also expected. But those are only 4 tight ends that I think you could even count on in any given week.
Rubio brings this up too, and I'm going to post this in here because I think it's worth bringing up. Even with Taysom Hill and the other tight end, who I think he means Foster Moreau, coming back, you're still in on Juwan Johnson. And to me, the answer is yes, because of a few factors. And I'll let you handle this, Steve, too. But the answer is yes, because he's definitely worth a roster spot in tight end premium league. So I'm not cutting Johnson. I do think that Hill and Johnson are more complementary players, even though they're both tight ends. I don't think that they're necessarily they're not going to cannibalize each other. And Foster Moreau, I've never been a big believer in for fantasy either. I think the meal ticket here is Juwan Johnson. That's why I'd still be in on Johnson. And quite frankly, you don't really have to, like, just because I'm saying I'm in on him doesn't mean I think like, yeah, this guy is a locked in starter every single week. I think that you got to pick and choose, stick and move, and know when to play this guy, know when not to. And I know I just got done saying that's not the easiest thing in the world, but out of all 3 of those tight ends, I like Johnson the best in New Orleans, Steve.
I would hope Johnson. Hill coming back is just, you got a glorified quarterback running back there. He's not really going out for passes and catching passes. And Moreau is a blocker. He's coming back to block. Johnson is a receiving tight end, but he can also block, and he's got wide receiver skills. Johnson all the way.
Mike Gesicki got hurt this past week against Green Bay, pectoral muscle, and Zach Taylor, the head coach of the Bengals, said he's going to be out for a while. Gesicki not been that effective this season. Obviously, not all his fault as Joe Burrow went down as well. Gesicki, 8 catches for 61 yards, has not found the end zone. But he was the primary, at least fantasy tight end in Cincinnati, ran well over 70% of his slots from the slot this season. It's going to be Noah Fant who is stepping in for him into this tight end role. Fant caught all 4 of his targets against Green Bay this past week for 27 yards, failed to get in the end zone. His long was just 9 yards. And maybe we're spending too much time talking about this, but I saw a team last week with a new quarterback, and I don't know if it changes going forward, given that this was Joe Flacco's first game with Cincinnati. The focus on the game plan was getting the ball out of his hands quick. It meant a lot of targets for Jamar Chase, but it also means quick stuff over the middle and check down stuff to the running backs and to Noah Fant. And I think that's why I bring it up here. Tight end premium stuff, if the Bengals continue with this game plan of this sort of short passing game and winning the first 10 yards past the line of scrimmage, I wonder if Fant is more reliable as definitely a guy on your roster, but as a flex certain weeks, knowing that there's no Mike Gesicki to cannibalize him. Like, he's the tight end. And I don't know, they got Tanner Hudson and he scored a touchdown, but to me, Fant's the get here. How much fantasy value does he have now with Gesicki out?
It's definitely going to have an uptick. He should get a few more targets and maybe even a red zone, end zone look. And that's worth a flex. So just one catch in the end zone pays off. And I think that Flacco is going to be an improvement over Browning there. They're still going to heavily target Chase, but he could be bracketed sometimes. And so it depends on the matchup. If you got a good matchup with a defense that doesn't defend the tight ends very well, then Fant's going to have some good value.
Just that I just want you to comment on that Bengals offense in general going forward here, Steve. Chase, 12 targets, 10 catches, failed to top 100 yards, but he did get a touchdown on a pretty incredible catch. Higgins did see 8 targets. He catches 5 of them for 62 yards. By and large, do you think that's kind of what we're looking at for the Bengals as long as Flacco's the quarterback? Or do you think now with him, getting, I guess he won't have a lot of time to prepare this week because they play on Thursday night, but you get the mini bye next week. Are we going to see more of a competent offense where Chase gets back up into that top 7, top 6 receivers? Higgins gets back up into the top 25 receivers on a week-to-week basis? Or is that just a pipe dream? Is Flacco going to get him to that level of relevance again?
He's got the talent to do it, but not until the offense starts running the ball with some effectiveness, and you're not seeing that right now. They're going to be better off with some play actions and deep balls, but they can't do that until they establish a run. But Flacco, I think, has some potential with that receiving core. They get separation, which is good for him, and he can still throw a good ball. So the line just needs to give him time, and they need to put a running game together. I think about everybody who took Chase in not Chase, but
Chase,
in the second and third round. I mean, what has he done? Nothing, 0. So if they get the running game going, and I think that the receiver is going to have a lot better chance. And Flacco is still capable. He's still balling out for an old guy. I love it.
I love it too. And hopefully he can keep everybody fantasy relevant on that team going forward, including Tom Smith's guy, Chase Brown, who you just mentioned, Steve. Tom Smith says, can we safely say that probably the biggest bust in fantasy so far, Chase Brown, can be benched? And I'll tell you this right now, Tom, I've already benched him in plenty of times already this season. I was big into Chase Brown last year. I have him on a bunch of dynasty leagues. I've benched him already. I don't, and I feel like this is another week that you can look at benching him against Pittsburgh on a short week. Adam Hahn points out how difficult it is for any running back to run behind that offensive line. I think Brown was punching above his weight a little bit last year. But yeah, Steve, I have no problem with anybody saying, that they don't cut him. They definitely don't cut him. But I have no problem with people saying, like, yeah, he's going to be on my bench until he shows me something. That might be the right play, depending upon how your roster is structured. It could be the right play for not only this week, but weeks going forward, too.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that.
One final question here for you tonight, Steve. And we haven't talked a whole lot about the waiver wire tonight. I don't know if you've looked at any bids or placed any bids already. Is there one player or maybe multiple players that you're looking at targeting on the waiver wire this week ahead of week 7, as well as a player that, you're ready to say, hey, I'm cutting the cord on this guy. I just don't see it anymore. I don't see the value. I'm letting him go.
Yeah, as you know, this time of year, waiver wires are pretty thin. With a 12 team league and 20 draft spots, there's not a whole lot there. It's slim pickings. But last week, when everybody was thinking on Atkins being the primary back for Hampton going out, you could pick up Vidal. He ended up paying off big time. I don't think he's left there anymore, but he might be in a couple of leagues. The only place I see any real value right now is possibly a few quarterback streamers, kickers, and defense streamers. There's not a lot of meat in there where I see any opportunities unless somebody drops someone like we were talking about, like Judy, and then Judy decides to start playing ball. I don't see a whole lot of talent in there. People doing too much out of the waiver wires.
Are you, or would you be looking at Kayshon Boutte again? He had the big week 1 and then did nothing. And then he had obviously a big week 6. If he's out there, is that a player that you look at? Or
yeah, I actually picked him up earlier in the year before last week. And it's weird because I played him in some of my leagues in the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And I had stacks in my DSS with everybody but him. I went with Diggs instead of him. And it cost me, a lot of money. I could have won a lot of money if I had just put Boutte in there. But I like Boutte a lot. The kid can play. And we got a quarterback there that can deliver the ball to him.
This week, as far as buys go, we have no Ravens, which let's face it, they need the break. And the Bills, who actually lost to Atlanta on Monday Night Football, they might need a break as well. And Rubio points out here, look ahead to week 8 when it's Bye-Mageddon. Bye-Mageddon happens week 8 this year with 6 teams on bye. It is the only week where more than 4 teams will be on bye, not this week, but next week. No Cardinals, no Lions, no Jaguars, no Raiders, no Rams, no Seahawks. When you look at that lineup right there, Steve, and you know that the wire is, as Tom Smith points out, the waiver wire is rough. You said it's bare. Do we need to start looking ahead to week 8 for some of these teams and for some of our fantasy teams and making sure we're actually covered a week ahead rather than wait a week when everybody's rushing to pick up the depth?
Absolutely. Not just a week. You need to be looking 3 or 4 weeks ahead, like he's talking about for sure. And I mean, I hate it. You brought it up, so I'm going to say I got a lot of Josh Allen. And I was so frustrated with that last play he had last night. He had a clear path to the end zone. He stepped that way and then talked himself into going the other way. And, they need some time off to get it straight. But I would definitely try to plan ahead for waiver wire and for bye weeks. I went through a rough patch earlier, I think the second bye week. And I had basically half my team on the bench. And sometimes you just got to, let a week go by and just suffer and take a loss and not worry about it. And but don't give up good players just to fill in something that's, and lose a good player to fill in something just for a bye week. Take a loss and a drop in the points and keep your strong team together. If you're lucky, you drafted really well and you got a team where you got 4 or 5 deep all across the board, multiple quarterbacks, but injuries have been devastating to a lot of people this year, and that's the part of luck that comes with playing fantasy football, man. That's part of it.
And I know plenty of people have complained about injuries. I'm no fan of injuries as well, but I will say that, part of the things I like about playing in a 12 team, like I play a lot in the KFFSC, and part of that with 12 teams and 20 man rosters is it gives you the opportunity to build up this depth. So when buys happen and when injuries happen, you're all set. Like you already have another player that's, not going to step in and replace Puka Nacua is not going to play this week. At least we don't think so. You don't have another Nacua on your bench that can come in, but you do have a capable guy ready to come in. And I think sometimes that's what separates the champions from the people who miss the playoffs, is not having the proper depth on your team.
Yeah, it's got to be balanced. If you got a balanced team, I've seen a lot of 0 running back teams, and then you get into the season, and then you get in real trouble if you get the injury bug. And I literally have like 5 guys injured at one time. This happened, and you just scrambling to try to keep it together. It's just part of the whole nature of it, and that's why you draft more than one team.
Yes, exactly. 100%. I love that testimonial right there. I will say this past week, I noticed at least 2 of my teams, Steve, I was down to like my last player I could play. The rest were either all hurt or had buys. I can't even imagine what that's going to be like in week 8. I want to throw 2 players here and just gauge your interest in it. I think they're both short-term plays at wide receiver. I mentioned Nacua. It doesn't sound like he's going to be playing this week, but it sounds like he might play in week 9 after the bye. What do you make of Jordan Whittington this week for him stepping in? It is a London game, and weird stuff happens in London. They take on the Jaguars there. Any interest in Whittington this week is a 1-week play? Maybe if you have Nacua, it would make some sense.
Yeah, I don't. If you don't have a need to, look for someone like that, I wouldn't start him. They're going to be able to run the ball and pass it, and they've got some other options, and they're playing the Jaguars. So the Jaguars defense has been getting turnovers, but they're still susceptible on the back end. I think Newsom will be settled in, though. They'll probably play a little better on the passes. They're probably going to do a lot of Kern Williams this week in London. We also started seeing him lighten up the tight end last week as well when Nacua was out. So I would expect Stafford to continue to do that as well. Whittington didn't play well last week. What did he have? 3 drops, maybe more. But I mean, he was more reliable last year. So, I think it'd be everybody else but him.
Yeah. The other player I want to ask you about here, and Tom Smith answered, or he also brought up Tutu Atwell. You have the same opinion of Atwell. Maybe you like Atwell a little bit better than Whittington this week.
I like Atwell better, and he's more of a deep ball threat as well. And Stafford will throw him 2 or 3 per game, and he's got a chance to catch all 3 of them against the Jaguars back in, unless they start playing better. They play too much zone, and they're not moving around and getting good brackets on players right now. They're leaving a lot of windows, and good quarterbacks will exploit that. You see what JSN did to him last week.
Yes, totally. Absolutely, 100%. The other one I wanted to ask you about as far as receiver pickups this week. By the way, Adam Hahn asked if Atwell's healthy. Sean McVay said yesterday that apparently Atwell's hamstring is not going to keep him out of the London game. So there you go. Those things change, obviously. Emeka Egbuka probably not playing this week. Chris Godwin already been ruled out. No Bucky Irving. Any interest in a guy like Tez Johnson or maybe Sterling Shepard? Again, might only be 1 week plays here, and Evans is supposed to be back for Tampa this week. Your thoughts on either Tez Johnson or Sterling Shepard taking up one of your roster spots, Steve?
Shepard, for sure. Yeah, he has the trust. Mayfield trusts him. He's the veteran, and I would start him over the rookie.
Shepard only saw 3 targets last week. He did catch 2 of them for 51 yards, but Baker Mayfield really peppered the ball all over, and he only tossed it 23 times in a game that Tampa was really controlling. It was the Niners that kept throwing to try to catch up and stay in the game. But Shepard I agree with you, by the way, Shepard over Tez Johnson there. I don't know if Johnson's going to be out on the field enough for him to make a difference. I know this guy's made a difference in a lot of his FFPC leagues over the years. Steve Highfill, a champion of 29 high-stakes FFPC leagues. He currently sits in 23rd overall, heading into week 7 of the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, trying to win a $1 million grand prize, not only there, but in the main event as well. Steve, always a pleasure to chat. Always appreciate your insight. Good luck in week 7. Good luck the rest of the season, man. We'll do this again sometime too, real soon.
All right, Balky. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Anytime. That is Steve Highfill, ladies and gentlemen, the Jay Gator, hanging out with us tonight. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Steve Highfill, the 29-time FFPC League champion, doling out some advice that hopefully will pay off for you in week 7 and the remainder of the season. That is going to complete our show tonight. I want to thank Steve Highfill for hopping on over. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Thursday night, 7 p.m. C.H. Herms from Optimus Fantasy and I will hang out for 2 full hours, including the first quarter plus of the Thursday night game between Pittsburgh and Cincinnati. That's going to be a lot of fun. And then Friday, we go live. Farrell's back this week, and we will be talking with, the week 6 4th place Big Gorilla Tournament team owner, Tyler Clendenin, who is going to join us for that show. Was the week 5 leader. He's in 4th place after week 6. So very, very cool. Check out the FFPC Weekly Challenge as well, myffpc.com. No draft, no salary cap. Just pick the 10 or 12 players that you want. If you want to play with kickers and defenses, you can, or you can play in the slim version. 10-team, 30-team, and 100-team formats. You can win up to $2,500. myffpc.com is where to go for that. We will talk with you again on Thursday for the FFPC Insider Access Show with myself and CH Herms, live on the Better Sports Network and all the FFPC and BSN socials. And then we'll see you Friday night for the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. For Steve Highfill, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. We will talk with you again Thursday night, and this show will go live next Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on Apple Podcasts under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email at rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and connect with us on X at RotoVizRadio. Remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount using the code RVRadio2025. That's RVRADIO2025 through the NFL Podcast homepage at rotoviz.com/podcast.